The grand ballroom of the Ashford Grand was glowing with crystal chandeliers and low, ambient chatter. I stood near a marble pillar in my dark suit, texting my 9-year-old daughter, Lily, "Dad survived the executive speech." She immediately replied, "Did you eat dessert?" I smiled, stepping around the pillar, and glanced across the crowded room. Standing near the staging area in an immaculate crimson dress was our CEO, Amelia Hart. I looked at her longer than I should have. Suddenly, Amelia turned her head, her dark eyes locking onto mine. She smiled, stepped right up to me, and whispered, "Like what you see?" My heart hammered against my ribs, but my gaze shifted upward. "The crack behind you?" I asked. Amelia blinked, her smile fading. "Excuse me?" I pointed to the historic archway above her head. That hairline crack running through the plaster. Not particularly. Every morning in our quiet suburban townhouse began at 6:15 sharp with the hum of the refrigerator, the rich aroma of dark roast coffee brewing, and the soft rustle of colored pencils. Sitting across the kitchen island was my 9-year-old daughter, Lily, swinging her legs while drawing an elaborate sketch of a sprawling hotel. "Why does your hotel have a water-filled moat around the front entrance, sweetie?" I asked, setting a plate of scrambled eggs and whole wheat toast in front of her. "Privacy, Dad," Lily announced calmly, shading the drawbridge with a gray pencil. "Important people don't like uninvited guests." "That is not how municipal zoning codes work, Lily," I countered with a dry smirk. "That's why you're not the architect, Dad," she replied without looking up. I paused, holding my mug halfway to my mouth. "Technically, Lily," I started before catching myself. "Technically what?" she asked, tilting her head with sharp green eyes. "Technically, you need to finish your breakfast before the school bus arrives," I replied smoothly, taking a sip of coffee. What my 9-year-old daughter didn't fully grasp was that 10 years ago, before my wife passed away and my life shifted completely, I was a licensed senior structural restoration engineer at Whitmore and Lane. I spent my days analyzing load-bearing masonry, designing complex underpinning systems, and managing high-profile historic renovations like the famous Union Hall restoration. But when my wife died 4 years ago, leaving me to raise 5-year-old Lily alone, I realized a painful truth. High-stakes consulting required 70-hour workweeks, constant flight itineraries, and endless nights in distant hotels. I was spending my life preserving century-old buildings while missing every single milestone of my daughter's childhood. I stepped down from senior engineering, took a local position as senior site operations coordinator at Crown Ridge Development, and built a predictable, grounded life where I could walk out the door at 5 o'clock every single afternoon. I didn't stop being an engineer. I just stopped needing strangers to call me one. Crown Ridge Development was a premier commercial firm specializing in high-end real estate, luxury adaptive reuse, and historic hotel restorations. My role involved managing site logistics, coordinating trade contractors, inspecting active floor conditions, and translating complex architectural drawings into daily construction reality. To the corporate board and high-level executives, I was simply the pragmatic site guy, the dependable employee who wore steel-toed boots, carried a digital tablet, and solved practical problems on the dusty ground floor. Our company was led by 35-year-old Amelia Hart, a brilliant, fiercely decisive chief executive officer who had earned her position through sheer strategic talent rather than family connections. Amelia was immaculate, highly controlled, and possessed a formidable reputation across the industry for her razor-sharp mind. But behind her crisp executive posture lay a quiet, guarded personal life. 3 years earlier, her engagement to a prominent investment banker had collapsed shortly before the wedding. Her ex-fiancé had bitterly claimed that he felt like he was constantly competing with her corporate ambitions. From that day on, Amelia had convinced herself that a romantic relationship was simply an unnecessary complication, a space where she would constantly have to apologize for her own success. Our professional paths crossed directly during the early site preparation for the Ashford Grand, a century-old luxury hotel that Crown Ridge had recently acquired. The project was the crown jewel of Amelia's executive tenure. Crown Ridge planned to preserve the historic facade, restore the iconic grand ballroom, and construct a modern luxury tower directly behind the original brick structure. During an early walkthrough, a senior executive pointed to a massive interior masonry wall and announced, "Everything west of the main hall can be cleared immediately." I stepped forward, looking up at the century-old plaster framework. "Not the central stair core," I noted calmly. The executive frowned. "Excuse me? The temporary works plan relies on that stair core for lateral stability during the basement excavation," I explained, keeping my voice level. "If you knock it out now, the east wall shifts 3 inches by Thursday." Amelia, who had been listening quietly from the back of the group, walked forward. She looked at the senior engineer beside her. "Is he right?" The engineer checked his tablet, flushed slightly, and nodded. "He's correct, Ms. Hart." Amelia turned her sharp dark eyes directly onto me. "Your name?" "Lucas Morgan. Site operations." "Site operations?" she repeated, a faint spark of curiosity gleaming in her eyes. "It means everybody calls me when something on the floor is already on fire," I replied dryly. A subtle, genuine smile touched Amelia's lips. From that exact moment, she remembered my name. Following the unexpected moment at the gala where I pointed out the plaster crack above Amelia's head, the atmosphere surrounding the Ashford Grand project shifted from casual corporate routine into a tense, quiet investigation. Amelia didn't panic or cause a public scene at the gala. She calmly instructed her site safety team to cordon off a narrow 10-foot perimeter beneath the decorative archway, using discreet brass stanchions. Later that night, as the final executive guests were leaving the grand ballroom, Amelia walked over to where I was reviewing site security manifests. "Was it really just the crack, Lucas?" she asked softly, leaning against the marble reception desk, her dark hair catching the warm ambient light. "It was an active structural indicator, Ms. Hart," I replied, keeping my tablet level. "Plaster doesn't shear in a straight line unless the substrate beneath it is moving." Amelia looked at me with a faint, amused smirk. "You ruined my executive presentation over a piece of cosmetic plaster." "You asked if I liked what I saw," I countered with a dry grin. "I was simply answering thoroughly." A soft, genuine laugh escaped her lips, a sound that felt entirely out of place amidst the stiff corporate politics of Crown Ridge development. The next morning, digital monitoring sensors were installed along the upper archway. The data revealed a tiny, fractional displacement in the secondary brickwork behind the decorative molding. It wasn't an immediate structural emergency, but it was an anomaly that should have been flagged weeks ago during the initial site survey. I pulled the master monitoring schedule from our digital archive and noticed something deeply troubling. The east archway was completely omitted from the weekly inspection checklist. I walked into the site management office to question Chief Development Officer Derek Sloan. Derek was a 50-year-old executive whose polished corporate presentation masked a ruthless ambition to secure the company presidency. Derek was aggressively pushing an accelerated construction timeline for the Ashford Grand, wanting to replace the complex historic foundation systems with cheap, precast concrete pillars to save 60 days on the master schedule. Why was the East Ballroom arch excluded from the weekly monitoring protocol, Derek? I asked, setting my tablet on his desk. Derek didn't look up from his laptop. Because our structural consultants deemed it a non-material cosmetic feature, Lucas. We don't spend corporate budget monitoring plaster. Plaster is attached to brickwork, Derek, I noted calmly, and the brickwork behind that arch is carrying lateral load from the adjacent excavation. Derek finally looked up, his expression hardening into an icy smile. You manage site logistics and trade contractors, Lucas. Let the development division and our certified consultants handle structural interpretation. Stick to your job description. I didn't argue. I simply picked up my tablet, walked back to my desk, and began printing every original engineering survey from the primary project folder. Over the next 2 weeks, my quiet investigation uncovered alarming discrepancies in the project documentation. A month earlier, our primary structural consultant had issued Revision E of the foundation underpinning plan, a critical update that mandated a slow, 4-stage excavation sequence around the historic ballroom foundation. But when I inspected the active construction documents distributed to our excavation contractors, I discovered they were operating off Revision D, an outdated package that allowed rapid, unsequenced digging right beside the original footings. Someone inside the development office had intentionally re-uploaded the outdated Revision D package to the contractor portal, bypassing formal engineering change controls to keep Derek's accelerated timeline on schedule. When I brought the document mismatch to Amelia in her private office, she sat at her mahogany desk, reviewing the file history on her screen. "Are you telling me our contractors are digging beside a century-old foundation using an invalid construction set?" Amelia asked, her voice rich with cold, controlled authority. "I'm telling you the physical documents on the floor don't match the engineering set issued by our consultants," I explained, leaning against her desk. "If they continue digging at this pace under Revision D, the ground settlement beneath the east arch will double by Friday." Derek was called into the office 5 minutes later. He smoothly dismissed the issue as a routine administrative oversight, claiming that a junior document controller had accidentally attached the wrong PDF file to the contractor portal. "It's a non-issue, Amelia," Derek stated smoothly, adjusting his silk tie. "Revision E was merely a technical clarification. Lucas is making mountain ranges out of molehills because site operations personnel love creating artificial delays to justify their overtime." Amelia looked back and forth between Derek's polished corporate defense and my calm, steady demeanor. "Hold the excavation on the east wing for 48 hours, she commanded firmly. "I want a complete technical review of the document distribution logs." Derek's face flushed with subtle anger as he left the room. That evening, as I was packing up my tools in the quiet site office, my email inbox chimed with an official notification from the development division. Derek had formally submitted an internal performance grievance against me, citing repeated, unauthorized schedule obstructions and unprofessional interference with executive project management. I looked at the screen, letting out a slow, quiet breath. I had flagged a severe structural risk, and Derek was attempting to build a paper trail to have me terminated before I could expose his dangerous shortcuts. The following day, a teacher training day forced the local elementary school to close, leaving me without childcare for 9-year-old Lily. My sister Rachel was out of town, leaving me with no choice but to bring Lily to the Crown Ridge corporate headquarters for the afternoon. I set her up at a small conference table inside the site operations department, giving her a fresh sketchbook, a box of colored pencils, and a tablet loaded with educational games. "No wandering down the executive hallways, Lily," I instructed sternly, adjusting her small yellow sweater. "And if anyone asks, you are an official site operations assistant." "I'm 9, Dad, not a goat," Lily replied calmly, opening her pencil case. "I know how to sit in a chair." 20 minutes later, Amelia Hart walked past the glass walls of the conference room. She stopped in her tracks, spotted Lily, and opened the door. Lily looked up from her sketchbook, her sharp green eyes widening in immediate recognition. "Look, Dad, it's the red dress lady," my daughter announced loudly. I closed my eyes in deep, agonizing embarrassment, rubbing the bridge of my nose. "Lily, please, lower your volume." Amelia walked into the room, a genuine, radiant smile illuminating her face. "Red dress lady? I see my official corporate title has been updated, Lucas." "I apologize, Ms. Hart," I said with a wry grin. "Her internal filter is currently undergoing site maintenance." "I think her filter is magnificent," Amelia replied, kneeling down beside Lily's chair. "What are you drawing, Lily?" Lily proudly turned her sketchbook around, showing a detailed drawing of the Ashford Grand. "I kept the old grand ballroom," Lily explained, pointing her pencil at the page. "And I added a roof garden on top so the guests can look at the stars." Amelia examined the drawing with genuine interest. "Roof gardens are very expensive, Lily. Why keep the old ballroom when you could build a shiny new tower?" "Because the old ballroom already has stories in the brickwork," Lily explained matter-of-factly. "Dad says it's easy to knock things down, but it takes real skill to keep what's already good." Amelia turned her head, her dark eyes looking at me as I stood a few feet back with my hands in my pockets. Your father says a lot of wise things, she murmured softly. Mostly at home, Lily added cheerfully. At work, he mostly complains about people using outdated drawing sets. I let out a choke of laughter, while Amelia's eyes sparkled with genuine amusement. Later that afternoon, the three of us ate a quiet lunch together in the executive courtyard. As Lily happily devoured her sandwich, she tilted her head and looked directly at Amelia. Do you have any kids, Miss Hart? Lily asked with unvarnished childhood curiosity. Lily, that is private, I interjected quickly. It's all right, Lucas, Amelia smiled gently, turning to my daughter. No, Lily, I don't have any children. Do you want kids? Lily continued smoothly. Lily, eat your apple, I warned. Amelia let out a soft, thoughtful laugh. Maybe someday, Lily, but my job keeps me very busy. Dad says maybe usually means yes, but I'm scared, Lily announced plainly, taking a bite of her apple slice. I froze in absolute horror. I was talking about getting a dog, Lily. I was explicitly referring to shelter dogs. Amelia threw her head back and let out a rich, delighted laugh that echoed across the courtyard. A sound so warm and vibrant that several passing vice presidents stopped to stare in shock. While Lily went to wash her hands at the courtyard fountain, Amelia walked over to where I was standing near the stone railing. She's an extraordinary little girl, Lucas, Amelia said softly, her dark eyes filled with genuine affection. You've done an incredible job raising her alone. Thank you, I murmured, looking down at my shoes. I spend most of my time worrying that I'm making every mistake in the book. You aren't, Amelia replied firmly, stepping closer to me. I see the way she looks at you. You gave up a high-stakes consulting career to be present in her life. Didn't you? I looked at her in surprise. How did you know that? I read your original employment application file last night, Amelia admitted quietly. You didn't step down from senior engineering because you failed, Lucas. You stepped down because you knew what actually mattered. She reached out, her soft hand gently touching my forearm. The simple, tender contact sent a powerful electric current through my chest. Amelia looked into my eyes, her executive armor completely gone, leaving only an authentic, unshakable human connection between us. Before either of us could speak, my phone buzzed with an urgent notification. An emergency structural alert had just been triggered on the digital monitoring portal for the Ashford Grand East Wing. The corporate storm broke the following morning inside Crown Ridge Development's primary boardroom. Amelia had convened an emergency technical assurance session, inviting the board of directors, internal audit head Helena Price, chief development officer Derek Sloan, and the site operations team, represented by myself. Derek Sloan sat at the head of the mahogany table, looking confident and completely relaxed as he projected his polished presentation deck onto the main display screens. This emergency session is entirely unnecessary, Ms. Hart, Derek announced smoothly, adjusting his silk tie. A minor sensor variance occurred yesterday on the east archway because site operations failed to properly calibrate the digital telemetry units. Amelia sat at the head of the table, her posture erect, her face a mask of absolute executive calm. We are here to review technical data integrity, Derek, she stated coldly. Mr. Morgan, please present your operational log. I stood up, adjusting my simple dark suit, and walked up to the primary display podium. I didn't present marketing graphics or vague strategic promises. I projected raw server logs, digital timestamp metadata, and side-by-side engineering drawings. At 4:15 yesterday afternoon, sensor point 4B on the east ballroom arch registered a lateral settlement displacement of 0.8 inches. I began, my voice calm, steady, and carrying immense technical weight. This displacement occurred because excavation contractors were operating under Revision D of the underpinning plan, a drawing set that allowed unsequenced digging directly beside the historic footings. Derek slammed his hand on the table, his face flushing red. This is an absurd, unverified accusation. You are a low-level site coordinator attempting to cover up your team's failure to calibrate field sensors. I am a site coordinator who reads raw engineering data. Derek, I replied, pointing my stylus at the display screen. Revision E was issued by our structural consultants 3 weeks ago, explicitly mandating 4 stagehand digging around the east arch. Someone inside your development office manually re-uploaded the outdated Revision D set to the contractor portal on Tuesday, suppressing the mandatory safety sequence to keep your accelerated timeline on schedule. I clicked the stylus, displaying the immutable digital audit trail verified by Helena Price. The server logs clearly showed that the file swap had been authorized using the administrative credentials of Derek Sloan's senior project coordinator. The board members sat up straight, leaning forward to examine the undeniable digital evidence. Realizing his narrative was crumbling, Derek launched an aggressive personal attack directly against Amelia and me. "This entire review is completely compromised," Derek shouted, pointing an accusing finger at us. "Mr. Morgan has an improper personal relationship with our CEO. They were seen flirting at the Ashford Gala, and he brought his daughter into her private office yesterday. He is using personal influence over Ms. Hart to sabotage my development schedule and protect his own job." A tense, breathless silence fell over the boardroom. I looked at Amelia, seeing the subtle tension in her jaw. Before she could speak, I stepped forward, taking complete control of the room. "I request that Ms. Hart completely recuse herself from the final voting process regarding my employment and the Ashford design selection," I declared, my voice ringing clear across the silent room. "If my operational findings cannot stand on raw, independent technical merit, then I should be terminated immediately. Strip the personalities away. Examine the physical physics." Derek blinked, caught completely off guard by my immediate, unyielding demand for independent verification. An elderly, highly respected outside structural consultant sitting on the technical review panel looked down at my submittal binder, his eyes widening in sudden recognition as he read my methodology notes. "Wait a minute," the consultant said, looking up over his reading glasses. "Lucas Morgan? Are you the principal engineer who co-authored the 2017 Facade Retention and Settlement Control Framework, published by the National Institute of Structural Engineers?" I met his gaze with a calm, modest nod. "I am." The consultant looked at the board members in absolute astonishment. Lucas Morgan designed the secondary underpinning sequences that half the historic preservation projects in this country currently rely on. He didn't just analyze this building. He wrote the foundational literature on historic facade retention. Derek's mouth opened slightly, his smooth composure shattering into complete, embarrassing ruin. You're a senior structural restoration engineer? Why are you working as a site coordinator in our logistics department? I looked Derek dead in the eye, my voice carrying an absolute, quiet dignity that resonated through the room. "Because 4 years ago, my wife passed away, and my daughter was 5 years old," I said softly. My old high-stakes consulting career knew more airport terminals than she knew bedtime stories. I didn't stop being an engineer, Derek. I just stopped needing strangers to call me one. And physics didn't disappear from my brain just because I stopped wearing an executive suit. Amelia sat in her chair, her dark eyes glowing with immense, quiet pride as the board members looked at me with profound, newfound respect. Helena Price then presented the final piece of undeniable evidence, an internal memorandum created by Derek Sloan's office 2 weeks prior, predating the final engineering review, explicitly instructing his analysts to suppress retention alternatives and present full demolition as the sole viable commercial outcome. Derek Sloan had not just managed a schedule. He had intentionally suppressed structural options, manipulated construction drawing sets, and violated corporate safety governance to force a cheap, multi-million-dollar demolition deal. The board voted unanimously to immediately suspend Derek Sloan from his executive duties pending a formal corporate governance review. The final design determination for the Ashford Grand was announced 2 weeks later by Crown Ridge's Independent Technical Committee. Recognizing that both preservation and modern construction possessed distinct value, the board rejected Derek Sloan's full demolition plan. Instead, they approved a revolutionary mixed preservation strategy. The historic Grand Ballroom, the iconic East Facade, and the central stair core were officially designated for full structural retention and adaptive reuse, while the degraded West Service Wing was cleared for modern expansion. The Ashford Grand was saved, securing both the historical integrity of the century-old building and the long-term commercial value of Crown Ridge development. Recognizing the need for high-level technical leadership, Crown Ridge's board of directors officially established a brand new internal position, Director of Restoration Engineering. The role provided complete authority over historic structural design, a significant salary increase, and a strictly structured operational schedule that guaranteed I would never have to travel internationally or miss a single dinner with my daughter. I didn't have to trade my daughter's childhood for professional excellence. My integrity and technical mastery allowed me to possess both. On a warm, sunlit Friday evening 3 weeks later, I walked into the quiet, newly stabilized grand ballroom of the Ashford Grand. Construction crews had completed the day's work, leaving the soaring space peaceful and still. Ambient amber work lights illuminated the magnificent historic plasterwork high above. Standing beneath the fully braced east archway was Amelia Hart. She wasn't wearing an intimidating corporate suit. She wore an elegant dark green dress, her hair falling softly around her shoulders. As my footsteps echoed softly against the stone floor, Amelia turned around. Her dark eyes locked onto mine, a warm, radiant smile breaking across her face. She stepped close to me, looked up into my eyes, and whispered with a faint, beautiful smirk, "Like what you see?" I smiled softly, taking a step closer and looking straight into her eyes. "I saw you first, Amelia," I whispered. "The crack was just my excuse to keep standing near you." Amelia let out a soft, breathless laugh, tears of genuine happiness glistening in her dark eyes. "For the record, Lucas," she murmured, reaching up to gently cover my cheek with her soft hand, "I didn't approve the mixed preservation plan to keep you in my life." "I know," I smiled, squeezing her waist gently. "You approved it because the physics was real, and because you are an extraordinary CEO. And I didn't come to this ballroom tonight because I needed a structural engineer," she added, her voice rich with radiant warmth. "I came here because I found a man who looked at me without seeing my executive title or my bank account. A man who showed me what true character really means." I leaned down, pressing my lips softly against hers in a sweet, lingering kiss that sealed our promise under the warm ballroom lights. 11 months passed like a quiet, beautifully optimized restoration. The Ashford Grand project flourished into an industry benchmark, drawing praise from architectural historians and city planners across the country. Crown Ridge Development stock value reached an all-time high, proving to the executive board that historical integrity and human care were far more profitable than cold, reckless shortcuts. My new role as Director of Restoration Engineering allowed me complete creative and technical freedom. I spent my mornings calibrating digital load-bearing models in our studio and my afternoons walking the construction site with my tablet, solving practical problems alongside the trade crews I had worked with for years. And at 5:30 every single afternoon, I walked out the front door, drove home, and sat down at the kitchen table to help Lily with her homework. Amelia's leadership approach underwent a profound, quiet transformation as well. She stopped relying solely on polished executive summaries, making regular, unannounced visits to active construction sites to speak directly with trade workers and site coordinators. She instituted a company-wide policy mandating that every technical report include raw data contexts and dissenting engineering options. On a sunlit Saturday evening, nearly a year after our first encounter, Amelia arrived at my home for our weekly family dinner. She carried a box of specialty drafting markers for Lily and a bottle of wine for us. Lily ran to the front door, greeting Amelia with a tight, familiar hug. Over the past year, Amelia had naturally integrated into our small family circle. She didn't try to replace Lily's mother, nor did she pretend to be a flawless parent. She was simply Amelia, the brilliant, warm woman who cheered loudly at Lily's school recitals, helped her build complex cardboard castles on the living room rug, and made our home feel complete. In a subtle corner of the newly restored Ashford Grand Ballroom, high on the inner curve of the east archway, a tiny, 4-inch section of the original hairline crack remained visible beneath a clear protective sealant. It wasn't the structural flaw. It was a deliberate preservation detail we had chosen to leave behind, because repaired doesn't have to mean erased. I held Amelia close as the golden sun dipped below the horizon, illuminating a future built not on artificial perfection or corporate titles, but on truth, family, and a love that was built to last forever. Have you ever allowed someone's professional title, humble work clothes, or simple lifestyle to lead you into underestimating their true value and character? Have you ever had to choose between staying safe in your comfort zone or taking a chance on a relationship that challenged everything you thought you wanted? Real integrity isn't measured by the prestige of your job title or the size of your bank account. It is revealed in how you treat people when there is absolutely nothing to gain. If the story of Lucas, Amelia, and Lily touched your heart,